right, everybody, welcome back to another podcast episode. Today I have Jose Pereira. I believe I'm probably mispronouncing it. Jose used to be a CEO of Citgo, and he has a great story to tell as far as what he has gone through and so on. So, Jose, welcome to the podcast.
Jerry, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having the time to talk with me.
I did a little bit of kind of looking into your story. So high level, I know a little bit about it, but the audience probably doesn't. But maybe before getting into the kind of the emotional part of the story, maybe before that, tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you doing today? What are you working on, or what's your life like today?
Well, my life today, after I came back on my situation that we're going to talk about that, I begin first. I didn't know what to do after my situation, so they begin to evolve. And at some point, I decided to convert my story in a coaching program. So today, I'm a leadership and resilience coach. I coach executives and entrepreneurs how they can overcome things in their business or in their life, and how they can combine their business with their personal fulfillment, because that's part of my story. And I'm a speaker. I am doing motivational speech, and I'm recently I begin appointed to begin to talk to schools. So next year I'm gonna be doing a round trip for the college and universities here in the U.S., talking about my story. And I wrote my book From Hero to Villain. So I became an author too. And I'm a strong advocate of my community. That we're going to talk about what is my community today.
Okay, that's awesome. And the other thing, I have a few questions for you, but another thing that I'm interested in is, how does a person go from wherever they come from to become a CEO? So in terms of your early age, like, who were you like in high school? Who were you like earlier on in life?
Oh, a very interesting question. I'm Venezuelan born. I was born in Venezuela, but I grew up here in the U.S. because my father was an oil and gas executive. So we came here to the U.S. when I had 5 years. I was living in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Okay. So I stayed in Tulsa until I had like 12 years. We flew back to Venezuela because my father was appointed to the oil and gas in Venezuela. The people that doesn't know, Venezuela was a heavy oil and gas country. And by that time, during the 70s, the 80s, the production of oil was run by American companies. So we lived in an American oil field that was run by the Gulf Oil Company. And the Gulf Oil in Venezuela was called Mene Grande, and I grew up in that camp. That camp was called San Tomé. It was a Venezuelan American camp. So my childhood was kind of a typical American childhood, because even though I was living in Venezuela, we had a lot of American customs. We celebrated Halloween, we celebrated 4th of July, we celebrated Thanksgiving. We did a lot of American things because there were a lot of Americans working in that field. And when I went to the high school, I went to the university, I did a finance bachelor degree. And I began to work in the oil and gas. So I began to work in the oil and gas when I was 21, very, very early. And I did a career of 35 years in the oil and gas. And that's how I became the CEO, because I did this long career and went through all the ladder of the company. And like in 2010, I was appointed to Citgo Petroleum. That is the U.S.-based company that belongs to PDVSA, that is the Venezuelan oil company. Many people doesn't know that Citgo Petroleum that's here in the U.S. that has a large line of gas stations all over the U.S. is a Venezuelan company. So I was appointed by PDVSA as a Citgo Petroleum assignee, and I continued my career in Citgo. And at the end of my career, I became to be the CEO of the company. So that's the way I did my career.
So you kind of climbed the corporate ladder, kind of
All
step by
the way,
step, getting up
all
there.
the way, all the way. Yeah.
And in your experience, what would you say helped you to climb that ladder and eventually become the CEO? What are some traits or some skills, or what helped you along the way?
Well, first of all, spoke English. When I began to work in PDVSA in 1985, there were few employees that spoke English, and I grew up here in the U.S. So, so I began to work in the international side. I was always appointed to international ventures. So I began to work with international companies that were partnered with PDVSA in joint ventures, and they gave me a lot of intercultural skills. Because one day working with Italian, the other day working with Japanese, the other day working with French, the other way working with German, the other day working with Chinese, American, British. So you really begin to navigate the intercultural thing. So that really became my strength, having that very multicultural strengths, and that really was part of my career. All my career I did it that way, and that really made me a lot of strength, because you know how
Hmm.
to deal with human being, and that's something that today I talk about it, by the way. So it's part of my speech.
Yeah. And what would you say, like a great CEO, what are some uh, tendencies or skills, or what's like the most important thing that a great CEO would have?
Be human being. Be human being. No, believe me. The great CEOs are the one that connect with the people, big human being. The CEOs that are empathic. The CEO that understand, that their employee, the, the, the employee feel that he really cares, is the one that is going to connect. And when you connect, because that's part of my experience. When you connect with the people, everything comes along. You can have a lot of technical skills. You can be a great planner. You can be whatever. But if you don't connect with the people, being human being, that's the secret sauce. Having a human
Hmm.
connection.
Yeah, that's awesome. So going back to Venezuela, so you mentioned you were in it from long time ago. Can you kind of describe a little bit about Venezuela and U.S. relations? From my understanding, I don't know the details of it, but way back there were great, like Venezuela was a really great country, um, i- way back, but now it's like falling
Yeah.
apart and so on. So like give a little bit more details on what made the country really good back then and what's not making it so good now.
Well, as I said, I went back to Venezuela in 1977, and I was graduated in 1985. 1985, during the 80s, Venezuela was the first economy of all Latin America. Was competing always with Argentina. Argentina and Venezuela were the most wealthy countries of Latin America by far during years. Many headquarters of American companies were in Venezuela. I can name a lot of companies that they had the Latin American headquarters in Venezuela. Because if you see the map of Latin America, in the border of the Caribbean Sea, is in the top is Venezuela. So it's the
Mhm.
front door of Latin America. Everybody they wanted to do business in Latin America, the first stop always was Venezuela. So Venezuela was a wonderful country during the 80s and the 90s that had a booming economy, very, very American friend, because remember the American company did a lot of business there. So for us as Venezuelan, the ties with the U.S. was really, really close. The only country of Latin America that plays baseball instead of soccer is Venezuela. It's because
Hmm.
the baseball was brought by Americans, and we love hot dogs, and we love hamburgers and pizzas. So we had a lot of American customs. But when these guys that came in the power, beginning with Chavez in 1998 and now Maduro, the economy began to go in the socialist, the communist side, and today Venezuela is a mess, a total mess. The economy is incredible how they destroy the economy. the economy and the country.
Yeah. So how did they come into power? Like if everything was going well, what made the people of Venezuela say, "Well, we want this kind of economics rather than what we have right now"? Like how did the
Was not
people turn?
was not the economy. Believe me, was not the economy. It was a problem with the politics. You know, as many countries, the people were sick and tired of the established politics. Venezuela had two parties that were very similar to the Democrats and the Republicans. So we have these two parties. They run the country, the politics during decades. At some point, the people got tired, or both parties, and then came this guy that was a snake enchanter, Chavez. He was having this fancy talking that he was going to treat well the poor people, that the state were going to give, the support, blah, blah, blah. And the people caught that message, and they really thought that they got in love of that guy. That guy really did what he did, what the economy is today. So it was the people, of course, if you talk to any Venezuelan today, the people know that they did a big mistake.
Hmm.
Because this guy, once they come in, they never go out.
Yeah. So the people were basically deceived. Like they believed Chavez, like how he was going to help the poor people and so on, but they were deceived by him.
No, no, and today they are even worse than they were before. So
Yeah.
the people now, Venezuela has like 8, 9 million people in diasporas all over the world, even here in the US, almost 1 million Venezuelans. Colombia has 3 million of Venezuela, Peru, 1 million. So Venezuela is a disaster today. It's a total disaster.
Yeah. So kind of going back to your story, so you were the CEO of Citgo, and at the time there was some kind of a meeting that you were requested to go to in Venezuela. Maybe back up a little bit and tell your story from that side.
Well, backing a little bit because the situation in Venezuela began to go so bad during that time frame that was in 2017. In the beginning of the year, the U.S. administration began to impose sanctions. They really wanted to throw out these guys because these guys were doing so bad, and so the U.S. government took the political decision that throw out these guys. So they begin to impose sanctions, very similar to they're doing with the Russia today.
Hmm.
Those sanctions begin to affect the economy, and the relation begin to be very tense. I was working here in the U.S. in Houston and Citgo Petroleum. I didn't have nothing to do because this was something related to the government, but I didn't feel well that my ethics begin to, I'm gonna have conflict, and so I talked with my wife, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna get retired. By that time, I had 35 years in the company. So I flew to Venezuela, and back and forward, I talked with my boss, and he finally accepted my retirement.
Hmm.
So I came back, and I was in retiring mode. I was ready to get retired. And I was in the movie with my wife, and I received a phone call asking me to go to a business meeting in Venezuela, a last minute business meeting. By that time, we were revamping a refinery in Aruba. So they wanted me to make the presentation of the status of the revamping. So I didn't see nothing wrong because that's normal course of business. So I went with that presentation with my 5 top executives that were involved in the project. And it became to be an ambush.
Hmm.
It became to be an ambush, and we got accused to be American spies. American spy, and have committed treason to the country, and to have made corruption and investment and
Hmm.
association, a lot of false charges, of course. Because
Yeah.
the situation then today, I'm aware, and this is something that happened to us, but happened to a lot of Americans all over the world, is that you get caught in the middle of the tension between two countries, and then they use you like a political pawn, like bargaining chip, and they leverage you. They negotiate. They use you as a bargain chip. So
Yeah.
that's what happened to us. We got caught in the middle of the tension between the two countries that you never think that something like that can happen to you. It happened to us.
Hmm. So that happened. That they kind of like took you, put you in jail or prison, and maybe kind of elaborate on that portion of it, like how what were you thinking in the beginning? And it took a few years, right? Like it was 5 years or so that you were in there.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
what was your mindset like throughout that process?
Well, it went through a lot of process because the first year we were put first of all, as I said, we were caught in the meeting. Imagine, picture this. I'm in a meeting with 1,000 people making a presentation. I received a standing ovation. The people, how great we were doing. So I felt like a hero, And I
Hmm.
was finishing my career. That was my last meeting before getting retired. So I was done. And I was like thinking, wow, Jose, what a way to finish your career. And 5 minutes after, I see those guards, like 20 guards, coming from me, and when they caught us, they put us handcuffs. In parallel, the president of Venezuela in national TV was announcing they have caught 6 American spies. And
Mm.
we were accused to the worst of the things, and we became the worst of the villains. So that's why my book is called From Hero to Villain, because I was a hero, and a few minutes after, I was a villain. So, and if you see that my book, this is the dungeon where we were, and these were the guards. That's the portrait. So we 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 the first year they were separate. So I saw my colleague. First
Wow.
year, can you imagine it? Alone, not knowing what was going on, no clue about no contact with the exterior world. I didn't know what was going on with my family. I had the lights 24/7 turned on, and I was starving,
Wow.
no food. So I lost 100 pounds and went through a lot of illness. Like I suffered pneumonia, bronchitis, a severe stomach ache. I would begin to spot blood. I went through a lot of things. So I was really thinking that I was going to die. So
Hmm.
can you imagine the mindset that you can have in that moment? See your situation in despair, not knowing what was going to happen to you, and knowing that you were accused to be an American spy in a communist regime. So my first thought was, I'm going to take my life off. I'm not going to survive this. So that was my first thought. At the
Hmm.
beginning, I'm going to be honest, that was my first thought. But God is good, my friend. God is good because at some point I begin to receive message because you know how to communicate some way. So I began to receive message that our family was really fighting hard to bring us back, and after like 10 months, they gave us a phone call, and I could talk with my wife,
Hmm.
and I knew that they were working hard with the American government to get us released. So they begin to give us hope, and I began to think in my family, what will happen to my family if I take my life? What will happen? So, I decided to change the mindset and say, hey, Jose, I don't know what's going to happen here, but you're going to make this. So and this is something that today I talk, that you can be going in any dark moment in your life. But in the moment that you decided to say, this is not going to affect me, I'm not going to be a victim of that circumstance, no matter what, I'm going to stay positive and I'm going to be focused on the solution of the problem. When you make that change in your mindset, everything changes. Everything changed. And believe me, it did for us, because we begin to work more to take care of ourselves, and the pressure, because you don't know what was going on. But today I know what was going on. What was going on is that the U.S. government was pressuring hard to get us released. They flew a commission of the UN to Venezuela. They intervened. And at that point, they decided to put the six together. When the six, because we were six guys, that's why we were called the Citgo Six.
Hmm.
because Citgo, the name of the company, is six because we were six. That's the name of the press. We became like a brand, the Citgo Six. So that's now the six of us are together, and because we were oil and gas executive, all of us had mindset as oil and gas. Anybody that worked in the oil and gas, that's hearing this can concur with me that you are prepared to manage crises. Because there are normally when you're in this position, it can be a blow up of a drilling well, or it can be we were not used to this, but we at some point we put together and we said, okay, we have to do something, we had to manage something, and we created what we call like a survivor plan, and we got to stick to that plan to the next years. The next year we did that on a daily basis, and it was a daily routine that we did, and it worked because we could back, and we could come back. And I'm not gonna say that everything was okay because we went through a lot of PTSD events. But I saw my colleagues a few days ago. We went to an event and we saw us 2 weeks ago, and everybody is okay. So even we went through this situation, all of us are okay. It's
What was
incredible.
what was part of that plan, of that survival plan? What were you thinking?
Okay, let me tell you something, and this is something that you can do in anything in your life. Anybody that's hearing this and is going to any situation in life, the first thing is you have to create a routine. So we created a routine. In our case, we were the people have to picture we were in a 100 square foot room, 6 people living in a closet. So the first thing that we had to administrate the space. So, for example, when we were gonna eat in the morning, we did one by one. We did a routine of eating, and everybody was in the bed, in the bunk bed, and the other was eating alone in peace because the family began to provide food. So now we're having food, so you can eat your food. You know, when you finish, there came the other, there came the other. After that, we did a cleaning routine because it was the pandemic. So we did a very, very severe sanitizing of that room on a daily basis. So everybody had a routine of cleaning. We had a routine of exercising. One of my colleagues, he's a marathon runner. So he created a routine of exercises: yoga, meditation, push-up, cardio, static running. We did a lot, 3 hours. We begin to read because now we're allowed to have books. We begin to read. I begin to smuggle letters. I decided to begin to write letters and smuggle it in the trash cans because now we were receiving food. And when we returned the cans to replace the food, I begin to put it in the double bottom of the cans, the letters. And I stayed doing that during 3 years. Part of my book is based on those letters that I wrote with my wife. We wrote around 1,000 letters. 1,000 letters between me and her. So now we are reading, now we are writing, we begin to play domino. We begin to have like a domino tournament, and we begin to pray and read the Bible. So when you put everything together, is what today I talk, because you need to have a proper mindset. You have to have the routine. You have to be focused. You have to connect with the people that is with you, take care of your well-being, and connect with your spirituality. That today is part of my coaching program. That's what I coach, because it's something that you can do replicate to anything in your life. You can do it to anything in your life. If you're going to any situation in your life and you apply this routine, you can overcome anything in life. That's what we did. So we
Hmm.
did it.
What would you say your relationship with God was before that, and what was it like during the ordeal?
Well, very good question, because this is something that for me is important. People know. I was not a religious guy. I was born in a Catholic country because Venezuela is very Catholic. I was born in a Catholic family. Normal Catholic that can go from time to time and Sunday to a church and sometimes to heaven. And even I was the guy denying, oh, I don't have time to waste my time going to church. Even when I saw that people were doing Bible study, I said, why people are wasting their time doing that? So that was me. That was
Mhm.
me. And today I understand that God, he slammed me and said, okay, you don't want to be with me? Bloom, bloom. Now we are there 3 hours a day reading the Bible and praising God and praying on a daily basis. And my friend, I rediscovered God there.
Mhm.
When I got that connection, when I begin to see and hear, because you see that and you read the Bible with other eyes. Being there is another perspective. When you read about Joseph or Daniel or Job or Paul or Silas, all the great prophets and characters of the Bible, reading that in there, reading the Psalms, so it gives you another perspective because you're living it. You're going through it. So really, it became very powerful. And of course, when I came back, I got connected to my church, and today I'm very connected to my church. I do several church services, and and my relation with God today is a daily basis. Very early in the morning, I wake up with my wife. We express gratitude and we pray. We do it every morning at 4 a.m. in the morning.
Wow. Awesome.
Every day at 4 a.m. in the morning, we keep and we pray and express gratitude. Because we decided to do it because remember, 4 a.m. is the fourth watch. So we'll do it
Mhm.
the fourth watch and the Holy Supper every morning. We do it every morning today.
Wow. Nice. Um, so I read a book called Never Split the Difference. I don't know if you've heard about that book.
I have heard about it, yes.
What do you think about what Chris Voss, the author, talks about in there versus what happened to you? Because he basically is saying that you can negotiate in such a way that you get all of it, like your side of whatever you want to get out of that negotiation. And he was, I don't know if it was FBI or CIA, one of the negotiators for one of those agencies. Like, what's your view on what he's saying there versus what happened to you?
Well, in our case, the, the point is that our case, as many of the case of Americans, is something that is called the hostage diplomacy. It's a very unique way of do diplomacy that these evil countries apply. So they use you as I said, as a political pawn. So they target you not because of you, because they didn't care who I was. Not it was because I was a CEO of the company. So what they do is they target people that maybe are high profile people, but not politicians, high profile people. You can be a conferencist in the world, or you can be a human rights advocate, or you can be a religious, a pastor. I don't know. So they target you because they use you as a pawn to leverage you. So the negotiation becomes really hard because a negotiation between two countries, and normally the country that are asking for you is asking a lot. Is asking a lot. So it begins to be a real problem. They getting back you, get you released. In our case, for example, they begin to ask first to get sanctions relief. They begin to ask to get lifted the oil embargo, lifted an oil embargo for us. All of these things, the U.S. say no, no. They begin to ask to negotiate that with a very big Lord Kimping that is a kind of a partner of Maduro. They didn't. They say no, and that took years. And after that, we were released because we did they did a prisoner swap, us by the two nephews of Maduro that were here in a prison in Florida.
Mhm.
So it's difficult because to get to those approval of the negotiation, first you have to have bipartisan agreement because they have to go through the Congress. And many people don't like to get those agreements because they said that these bad guys are getting things. because of that. But the real situation is that these are real human beings, are human life. What are you going to do? Are you going to live them? So if you see the particular cases, you will see that always the negotiations are very hard. It's difficult. It's difficult to get an agreement. So it's difficult. It's not like if you're a bank robbery and you took some hostages, so you can get a negotiator there. This is a different thing, totally different, because you're talking between two countries, negotiation between two countries.
Yeah. So totally different level of negotiations.
Yeah, totally different level of negotiation. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of what's going on in the world today, like with the BRICS countries kind of lining up together? So like Russia, China, South Africa, and these other countries. I believe Venezuela is kind of part of it as well. Like they're kind of
Venezuela
lining up.
he tried to be part of it, but yeah, he's kind of in favor of that.
Mhm. And like it seems like the world is kind of polarizing into two big powers.
Yeah.
What's your view kind of in general on that, and maybe some insight?
Well, it's true. Is what you say that the world's being polarized, and maybe the new administration here in the U.S. can be a changing in the way that, because U.S. always has been the top of the power. So this country, they have the power that will never have the power of the U.S. So it's a matter of get alignment, but this is the new reality. The new reality is that you're gonna have two blocks. That's the new reality. That's what happened in the years to come. So that we have to deal with that reality.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, this is kind of like almost like a naive question from me, but do you think we'll ever get to a point where our governments truly represent us and not just kind of their own interests? Like we especially in the free world, we vote for people to govern us, but then they get to office and then they do kind of their own thing. They're not really, they kind of appease the people saying, yeah, we'll do this or that, but then they do their own thing anyway. And it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Every country had the same problem.
Right.
Every country had the same. This is a worldwide phenomenon.
Right, and that's why I was going to say the same thing. So whether it's kind of the West or the BRICS, because in Russia it's not any better. Russia came from USSR, the communist kind of regime, and so on, and it was even worse there. It's like, in some ways they're even in some ways like straightforward, telling you that you're going to be repressed and so on. I mean, just through their actions of camps, gulags, and things like that. I mean, I came from Ukraine originally, and I lived there still as part of USSR, and then my parents moved out just before USSR broke apart. So definitely the freedoms here are way better than whatever was there. But it seems like in either case, people at the bottom, they're kind of manipulated or kind of moved in certain directions, and yeah.
I believe that the only difference, and you said it there, because these regimes, this regime, they are shameless doing repression. They are shameless, try to take the freedom. They don't care. In the West, fortunately, we still have freedom here because this country has freedom. What's happening today in Venezuela is the same that is happening to all these countries, because remember, this is kind of a replica. This becomes like a copy-paste. The way this happens is like a copy-paste between all the countries. Even one is smaller and the other is bigger, but the technique that they use are the same. Because in the case of Venezuela, who had been training Venezuela? The Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, the Afghans, so the Cubans, though they have a lot of bad guys training them, So they have a lot of bad techniques. And I can tell you, my friend, when I was there, I saw it. Because I was there with the political prisoners of Venezuela, a lot of political prisoners, more than 400. And I saw what was going on. And I saw all these, they have an advisor of all these countries. I saw Cuban advisor, I saw Iranian advisor, I saw Russian advisors there because we were there. We saw all of that.
Yeah. What would you say would be something that people can do to not allow that to happen in their country? If they have some freedom, what can they do to not allow kind of dictatorship to take over?
Well, because this guy always comes with I say like a sexy speech. You know, it looks like romantic speech, and they begin to try to love people, and there's where they come. The people have to really be focused and try to not accept that, because that is what is happening in Europe too. They're getting a lot of socialist candidate, and Latin America is also the same. Yesterday there was an election in Paraguay, and it was a left guy, and I said this country never learned the lessons. Here in the U.S. was happening something very similar, because what happened is that the young people don't know the history.
Mm-hmm.
Young people are blind, and they don't know what happened in the past. And these politicians, they use that the people don't know the history, they don't know about the past, and they begin to have this sexy talking, and they try to convince people. The people here have to be focused and not allowing that to happen.
Yeah, so it requires some action on the people's side of looking and seeing what the person has done, looking at their track record, not just what they say.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And the politician has to be that way. Look what they do, not what they say, because normally they say something and they do a different thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you spent 5 years in there going through that ordeal. What was it like getting out of, like finally getting out of it?
Well, we could come back because this has been here in the U.S. a evolving process, because, as I said, there are a lot of Americans in this situation. A lot, maybe around 60 Americans are today captured in other countries. So it began to be so serious, the situation, that it was passed an act called the Robert Levinson Act. In the name of, there was a guy of FBI that disappeared in Syria. His name was Robert Levinson. In his name was named this act. The Robert Levinson Act created the classification of hostage and wrongfully detained. So when you get that classification by the U.S. government, now you are under the umbrella of the protection of the government. So they can use any technique to bring you back. In our case, they begin to have direct negotiation 1 year before we came back. There was appointed, and there's an ambassador. His name is Roger Carson. He runs an office called the Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs, SPIHA. He is a subsecretary of state because he's attached to the State Department. So that guy he himself began to have direct negotiation to get us released. It took 1 year. After 1 year, the back and forward, it was the negotiation that they did a swap with the two nephews. And that's the way we could come back. If they don't get that agreement, I will still be there.
Yeah. So the swap happened. I mean, if you want to give some details around the swap, I read a little bit in the book how that happened. But if you want to give a little bit of details, that would be good.
Yeah, that was October 1st, 2022. That was 2 years ago. We awoke. They awoke us very early in the morning, so they asked us to get dressed, and we didn't know what was going on, but they asked to get dressed, civil dress, because when we went out, we usually to use like a yellow uniform that we call the minion uniform, the minions, it was yellow. So they told us to get dressed normal. And when we went to the office of the director, we saw a lot of people there with cameras, doctors, nurses. So they began to take us all our blood things. They wanted to certify that we were normal. Okay. and they loaded in a truck. And when we saw that we were heading to the Maiquetía airport, we knew that it was happening, that we get released. So now they told us that we were going to have a 1.5 hour flight. We were guessing what was going on because from Venezuela to the U.S. is 5 hour flight, so we didn't know where we were heading. Finally, we landed in a Caribbean island called San Vicente and Grenadines. It's in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere. Uh, They decided to land there, and the Venezuelan plane with us landed there. 5 minutes after landed the U.S. plane with the two nephews, and then there's where the swap came in that island. And after that, we came back here. It was like a 3 more hour flight, 3 or 3.5 more hour flight. There was like a tense moment because during that time we were still in international air, so we were not safe. We were not. We were like in the twilight zone in that moment. After we crossed the American space, is that they announced that we were safe. So at that moment is when the president of the U.S. called our wife, and he personally
Hmm.
called them. They have a Zoom call with him, and he announced that we were got released because but that moment was secret. Nobody knew that was going on. And well, we landed in a military base here in San Antonio, the Brooks military base here in San Antonio, and we stayed under the protection of the government during 2 weeks. We went to the program that they do for the prisoner of wars and missing in actions. So we stayed in that program during 2 weeks, and after that, the rest is history. I'm back.
Yeah. And I read that you went to the White House once or twice, or at least to Washington many times after that.
My wife during this ordeal, she went two times to the White House, and she met with the State Department in a monthly
Hmm.
basis. I came back. I went to the White House, and I was attended by in the Congress. I did a speech in the Congress talking about this. I also was invited to the UN. I went last year and this year. I have gone twice to the UN, always talking about this because I became a vocal voice about this hostage diplomacy. So I also uh, mm, support the foundation that work in this area. They always call me if something is going on. I have writing articles. I have been interviewed. I did a fundraising with them. I have done several things with the foundation that work for the hostage
Hmm.
community today.
And just kind of thinking through like everything that has happened to you in your life, going from when you were young to becoming the CEO, but then being kind of imprisoned falsely, and now doing some coaching and so on. If you can kind of look through your life, what would you say your purpose was, or did you know what your purpose in life was at each stage, or can you kind of connect the dots looking backwards only?
I can connect that back today because for two reasons. Now I'm connected with my spirituality. Now I know how God has been doing things in my life that I didn't see it in the past. Now I can see it. That's one thing. But the other thing is that because we went through all this PTSD event, I have a therapist. I still have her. I don't have no shame saying that I have a therapist every week. Now we are friends, and that she helped me a lot in discovering things that happened in my past that helped me to survive this. So I was kind of being prepared. And by the way, my second book is going to talk about that. How things in my life that I didn't realize it. Because remember, when you're young, sometimes there are things that you don't remember. And the human nature is in the mind is so incredible that when you go through traumatic events, sometimes your mind blocks them. So they get blocked, so you don't remember them. So when I begin to revisit those events, I discovered, I rediscovered they have had during my childhood and during I was growing up, events that were happening in my life that were preparing me for this event. So when I came to this event, I was kind of prepared, and I didn't know it. I didn't know it, and that's one of the, because the people tell me how you did it. I don't know, because it was God. But He was preparing me. So now, today, I can connect the dots. Believe me, today I can connect. And my purpose, of course, I discovered that my purpose is helping others today. Today, my testimony, my situation, that I can talk loudly about this in any audience. I can talk this. I can talk to a school. I can talk to a university. I can talk to a museum. I can talk to a conference in a congress. I can talk anywhere because this is a universal message. So what happened to me today is my testimony that things in life can be overcome. And today I do it in my church. My church has used me several times to give me my testimony to help others that are having ordeals in their life. So that's part of my calling today. Try to spread my message as much as
Yeah.
possible. That's my
Yeah, that's
calling.
awesome. So if there's a young person out there and they're not sure what they want to do with their life, or like what their purpose is in life, what kind of advice would you give them?
The first thing is that you have always, no matter what circumstance you're going, you have to be always trying to have a positive mindset. That's the first thing. The second thing is that try to be focused in the situation, because sometimes the young people happen this a lot, that they don't get focused, they get depressed, they get with anxiety, so they lose the focus. And when you get focused in what you're going, sometimes the answer you have it in front of you, or maybe not the answer, but you can find a path for the answer. The first thing that I said, that try to look for a circle of support. Never do things alone, because one of the problems that happen with the young people, that when they're having problems, they lock themselves, they don't want to talk with nobody, and they got depressed, and there will come all these suicidal thoughts. So when you have that circle of support, you can have people that can help you, and try to look at your spirituality and take care of yourself, because this is another thing, that the people, when they're going through a situation, they decided they don't want to eat, they don't want to sleep, they got so depressed. So try to do things. When you get your circle of support, maybe you can go to a movie, read a book, try to walk. Do small things. That doesn't have to be fancy things. Small things that can give you appreciation and a connection with your spirituality. The people, one of the things that I like today, that I see a lot of young people trying to go back to God. I see it a lot today. Young people seeking for the help of God, and that is great. When the kids try to discover or rediscover God in their life, that is great. We have in our church a minister called SWAT. That is the young people between 12 to 20 years. And it's growing fast, so fast. And I got surprised how many young people I see coming to the church every weekend. And there are more and more and more. And this is great, because now this kid had find a purpose. Because that's one of the problems. The phones, the social media has made, it can be good, but it has done a lot of damage too. So this is a message that for me is universal. I can talk to them openly because I went through it. I
Yeah.
went through it.
And speaking of you going through, especially the captivity and so on, um, if you had a choice, or if you could go back and not have to go through it, would you decide not to go through it, or would you still go through everything that has happened to you?
It will look weird, my answer, but I will go through it, because I'm not glad what happened to me, but I'm glad the lessons I learned. That Jose Pereira today is a total different guy that went through that, by the good. by the good, because I rediscovered my connection with my family, with my wife, with God, with myself, with my family, with my kids. For me today, I express gratitude because of that. Because in the past, I didn't care of nothing of that. I'm gonna be honest. I was lost. So that's why part of my coaching is that try to that you can make the balance between your business and your personal fulfillment. Because this is something that people that when you're climbing in the ladder, in the corporate ladder, you begin to you grow your business, you grow professional, but you begin to have problem with your personal life, your family, your friends, your kid. So you can be that great guy in the company, and when you come into your house, you're miserable. So that is something that you need to have that balance. That is something that today I will not negotiate. Having that balance for me is a
Mhm.
must.
And kind of speaking of what you do, if you want to share more about your coaching, what kind of services you offer, so share a little bit about that.
Yeah, as I said, I had this coaching. I had two coaching basically. I coach basically I do one-on-ones. I coach entrepreneurs that are beginning their business or having a struggle with their business, how they can, go through it. So it's very tailor made because I first interview them and see where their struggles, and we work through it. And I have the other coaching that is more for the C-suite category. That is very personalized. It's more like a calling service. It doesn't have nothing structured, but it's really trying to rebalance their life, rebalance their life, as I said, the business and your personal fulfillment. And I have also the speaking that is growing more and more. I am becoming more a speaker than coach right now because I'm having a lot of invitations to speak. And by the way, I already have booked for the next three first year of 2025. I have already booked several speaking
Hmm.
events.
And how can people reach out to you if they do want to get some coaching?
Okay, you can go to my webpage. My webpage is very easy, joseconnect.com. You go to joseconnect.com, you will find my coaching. And then, by the way, I encourage the people. There is a very nice quiz that I have in my webpage that you can take the quiz, and it will tell you what type of leader you are. Because that is very important to know what type of leadership you have. If you're a servant leader, or you're a visionary leader, or you're a purpose-driven leader. So there are type of leadership. Depending the type of leadership, you can understand better where you come from. So I do these two type of coaching. So you can see it in my page. You can see also my speaking gigs. I have several speaking gigs, but the most important that I do is one called From Captivity to Freedom, where I talk about how you can be captive and you need to get freed. And not necessarily have to be captive physically. You can be captive of your emotions, of your feelings, of your beliefs. I try to do analogy between what happened to us and the real life. And I have another one that is called the 4X Growth Tool to Unleash Your Unbreakable Spirit, because that is something that I discovered. That everybody has inside that inner force, that unbreakable spirit, but you have to unleash it. And I talk how you can do it. So these are basically my speak and my book that I'm promoting that not only talks about my story, talks about my legacy, what I'm talking today. So these are my three things that I do today: the coaching, the speaking, and my book, and of course the advocacy that I do for the hostel community and my church service. So I have a lot of
You're
plenty
definitely
things today
staying
to do.
busy. Yeah. One more question for.
But I love it. I love it. I love it because I do it with a lot of joy. I'm
Yeah,
feeling joy
that's
doing
great.
it.
So one more question for you. As far as the world today, what would you say the world today needs more of?
love. The word is really love. Yeah. And I always talk about the human touch. And we look naive, but believe me, when the people are more people, when the people look the other as human beings, that will give you love, and that's what Christ talks. Love everybody like yourself. So love. The world today needs more love. The good thing that I see a movement in the young people trying to go back to God. That is good. I see a lot in the social media, big stadiums, people praising God, young people praising God. Something that is kind of the 70s movement, but more because the 70s was more like a woo-woo movement. This is more focusing God. So that's
Yeah,
great.
that's
That's really great.
definitely great. Anything else you'd want to share before we wrap up?
Well, I love the people that connect me because I had discovered that this for me has become like a movement. I have become like a movement. I am today connected to people all over the world. And I incredible people that today we have connection, we have done incredible things together. We're even thinking, for example, February, we're thinking to have a mastermind with people all over the world talking about emotional intelligence and resilience. We're planning to do it. And people that we are connected, that I said, how I got to these people. But we're now friends, you know. So that's great. So anybody that wants to connect with me, that hear this message here and really resonate to them, call me, contact me. You go to my webpage and then you can contact me through my calendar. My calendar is very easy. It's joseconnectonline.com. You go there and you can book a call with me and
Yeah,
we start
sounds
from
great.
there.
Well,
Yeah.
Jose, thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your insights. It was very insightful. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jerry. I didn't know you were Ukrainian, so yeah. It's I have a story. You know, let me tell you before we finish. When we were
Mhm.
waiting to get released, and was going time and time and time, and you begin to get kind of anxiety. You didn't know what was going on because the negotiation we knew they were going on, but the time was passing. In April, we saw that a guy was released from during the Ukrainian and the Russian war, a guy called Trevor Reed. So we saw it in TV because by that time
Mhm.
we were already having a TV. And we saw when that guy was released. When I saw that, I said, okay, if during the Ukrainian and the Russian war, this guy is released, we're going to come back. So we kind of got tied to the situation that was going, the unfortunate situation going between Ukraine and Russia because of that, because that guy was released in the middle of the peak of the tensions. They got
Right.
a
So it
prisoner
gave
swap
you
with the
hope
guy.
at that time.
Of course, let me tell you, you have to read my book, that chapter, because there's a chapter where it's related to a luggage that we used to be anchor of our hope, and that luggage, I came back with that luggage. I every day I talk to the luggage, say, "You're gonna go back with me, my friend. You're gonna go back with me, my friend," and
Wow.
that luggage came back with me.
That's awesome. Very good. Yeah, Jose, I want to be kind of mindful of your time. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much again. And maybe in the future we'll do this again and with some other questions. So yeah, great.
Great
Thank you.
question.
Take
Great
care.
question. Thank you, my friend.